Thank you for joining us today. Happy Friday. We have a really special guest for you today. Dr. Pompa and I will be interviewing Dr. Stephanie Seneff, and we're so excited to have her on the show. Before I introduce her, I'd like to read a little bit about her so you guys can learn a little bit about her, and then we'll jump in to today's topic. So Dr. Stephanie Seneff is a senior research scientist at the MIT Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. She received her BS degree in biophysics, MS and EE degrees in electrical engineering, and a PhD in electrical engineering and computer science, all from MIT. In recent years, her research has mostly focused on the relationship between nutrition and health. She's written over a dozen papers in various medical and health-related journals on topics such as modern-day diseases and the impact of nutritional deficiencies and environmental toxins on human health. So welcome, Dr. Seneff. So excited to have you here today. And hello, Dr. Pompa.
Yeah. So I'm here in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and Stephanie, you're what island are you in
Hawaii,
there?
Hawaii, my favorite. The one that's lush and beautiful, so Kauai.
Yeah, so we got a foot of snow last. I just came off the ski, and you just came out of a pool. Am I right on that?
Cool. That's right. We've got to.
I'm in a rainy office building here in Pittsburgh, so
you've got the worst of the lot.
Oh gosh.
Modern technology, yeah, it's amazing, right? So we're in some beautiful places, so that's great. Well, you know, I thanked you at the top of the show here before we even started the show, Stephanie, because I follow your work. I've all of your studies, and I'm so grateful. Honestly, I'm so grateful and I can't express how grateful I am, because I teach doctors around the country. You know, my goal is to get out a message of cellular healing and cellular detox, and really these unexplainable illnesses that we're in just epidemics of today. Your work applies to this, I think, more than any other. Honestly, I mean, I can't get a sentence out of my mouth when I'm teaching if I don't talk about the gut, leaky gut, and the causes, which I believe today's show really is the #1 cause of this epidemic that's leading many epidemics of hormone problems, autoimmune, autism, you name it, we can talk about. So with that said, Stephanie, our listening audience knows a whole lot about gluten. Would you agree with that, Meredith, right? I mean, everyone knows about gluten. My gosh, I heard people joking about it in the restaurant, this morning. Everybody knows about gluten. However, I wrote an article a while back called, it's not just about gluten. So Stephanie, what is the bigger culprit than gluten? Because at the top of the show, that pulls us right into what we need to talk about.
Right, and so it really, I've got an echo. Okay, it really gets into the issue of glyphosate. Glyphosate is the active ingredient in the pervasive herbicide Roundup, which is used enormously and increasingly every year on our core crops. And I need to get into the GMO Roundup Ready crops, of which wheat is not a GMO Roundup Ready crop. And in fact, when I first saw the issue of gluten intolerance, I was puzzled for that reason. I thought, well, wheat's not Roundup Ready. It shouldn't have a lot of glyphosate on it. Because I was thinking maybe glyphosate is causing this, because there was a very strong correlation between the usage of glyphosate on crops and the increase that we've seen. And a lot of things, one of which is celiac disease. What I found out by looking is that, in fact, they do spray Roundup on wheat increasingly, routinely, right before the harvest. This is an increasing practice. And I was stunned when I saw that, because then I really got serious about trying to see, could I explain this? Could I explain gluten intolerance on the basis of what I know glyphosate does to human biology? And so I launched a big effort with Anthony Samsel, and we published a long paper where we looked at all the different features of celiac disease, and every one of them, we could find a way that glyphosate could cause it, particularly the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which they have a much higher risk to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. People who have celiac disease have a much higher risk, and that's been directly connected to glyphosate poisoning.
Let's back up for 1 second, because number one, I want you to say why do they have more of this chemical sprayed on it? And glyphosate, just for our views, is the number one herbicide pesticide used in the world. I used to say specify it with Roundup, which you mentioned the word Roundup already, and explain what that actually is. But so this chemical used to be just, in this Roundup, which is the number one herbicide. But now I think their patent has opened up that really every company around the world can get this glyphosate, which is this active ingredient. So we're going to talk about the problem that a lot of your studies showed that are creating a lot of these diseases. But okay, what is GMOs, and why is glyphosate sprayed in massive amounts on these crops?
Right. Now, so the GMO crops there's only a few. There's less than a dozen of these GMO crops, but many of them are the core crops of the Roundup, of the processed food industry. So you have corn, soy, canola oil, which is a very cheap oil that's used a lot in foods, and especially in the processed foods. Sugar beets, so that's a source of sugar. And then cotton, tobacco, and alfalfa. That's pretty much an exhaustive list of the GMO crops, of the crops that are GMO engineered to be Roundup ready. We hear so much today about anti-GMO movement and all this stuff about the GMO and whether there's a problem with it. I'm not going to say there isn't a problem with the GMO, but there is certainly a problem with the fact that the GMO allows the crop to be sprayed with Roundup without dying. This is a unique property of these crops. Every single plant on the planet dies if it's exposed to glyphosate, except for these special crops that have gotten a bacterial gene inserted into their own genome to protect them. And so the fact that all the other plants are killed, this is a universal herbicide, ought to tell you something about the toxicity of this chemical in general to life.
Yeah. So I mean, the fact is like they're raising these crops basically to be able to withstand a lot of this chemical. So number one, we're able to keep the weeds at bay, supposedly. And I know there's problems with that now, but in pests, and obviously it's going to help farmers. I mean, increase yields. And you said something. You actually said, wait a minute. But what about the fact that it's being sprayed on every conventional grain today through a process called desiccation? They're actually doing it to kill the plant before harvest. It causes it to shrivel. It's called desiccation, and then it increases yield. So now we're being exposed with every conventional grain, especially the GMO plants that you just mentioned. So, I mean, can we even avoid this chemical today?
Right, and I want to say that I just today discovered that it's sprayed on peanuts right before the harvest. I've been hearing all of this about peanut allergy, and I'm suspecting now that that's also caused by glyphosate, with the same process that's going on with gluten intolerance. So it's really disturbing.
Yeah.
The amount, and it's been increasing every year because of the GMO Roundup Ready weeds, essentially, that are developing. I mean, when you, in these crops, of course, this industry somehow didn't anticipate this. They should have. As they exposed these weeds to glyphosate, the weeds got smart, and they actually became more and more resistant, so they could tolerate more and more glyphosate, so they had to use more and more every year. They said they would use less, but they used more. And alarmingly more, like 800% increase over the last 10, 15 years. In the use of glyphosate on crops. Incredibly escalating exactly in step with the rise in autism in this country.
Well, yeah, you have some of those graphs. I mean, I remember seeing with the rise of dementia, with the rise of Alzheimer's, the rise of autism, as glyphosate amounts went up, these diseases went up. So now, again, coincidence? Maybe. But it's when you look at the numbers, it's pretty hard to say coincidence. So tell me a little bit about your research there.
Right. I mean, I've just been amazed. And in fact, I'm collaborating now with Nancy Swanson. It's quite remarkable to me that when Anthony Samsel and I, so he's the one who got me started. Well, I should go back actually a little bit of history. Don Hubert was the one who originally, Professor Don Hubert, who's a retired professor from Purdue, outstanding man, very, very intelligent and extremely well informed on plants. It's his area of expertise. And I heard him give a 2-hour presentation a little over 3 years ago. It's hard to believe it's only 3 years because it's been such an incredibly intense 3 years of my life.
I agree.
But he gave this presentation, and I was off on the edge of my seat because I saw right then and there that this was the reason why we had an autism epidemic. I had been looking at autism for the previous 5 years and coming up frustrated because I saw all these symptoms in autism, like the gut problems, that I couldn't explain. And, the vitamin D deficiency, all these things that I couldn't explain. With the things that I was looking at. And I didn't think to look at Roundup because, like everybody else, I believed it was harmless.
Right.
And so Don opened that window for me. And then Dr. McCullough is the one who introduced me to Anthony Samsel. He's really a remarkable man. And he and I have collaborated now on 4 papers. We're working on a 5th one and a 6th one probably right now, working on more research to work out different aspects of glyphosate. It is an amazing molecule, really fascinating actually, because of its the many different ways in which it can disrupt biology. It's just incredible. And how they ever got it past the regulatory agencies is what puzzles me.
Well, I mean, to this day, they're claiming it's still safe. I mean, when you look at Monsanto's mantra, they're still saying that it's safe for humans, right? I mean, you know, that I don't know that they've changed their tune, right?
Yeah, well, the WHO, of course, just this past March, recognized that glyphosate is a probable carcinogen. That's a big deal. The IARC in Europe, their regulatory agency, just said no, it's not. So, you know, different people are being influenced by different parts of the science. And so, if you look at the what the industry portrays, the industry it's in their extreme best interest to pretend that this chemical is not toxic. And then the regulators are just believing it because I think they don't want to face the fact that they've got to find a different way to do agriculture.
Yeah, yeah. It's like overuse of antibiotics in the soil. You know, it's like now you become addicted. Now that's like, how do you live without an antibiotic? How do you live without this chemical, even though it's causing long-term problems? But you know, you brought up autism, and we tailed on a few other diseases. You know, how does glyphosate really affect all these different conditions? I mean, I think that's the question that people might be skeptical about. It's like, wait a minute, one chemical, it can cause autism, it can be linked to, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and all these conditions.
Obesity,
How is that possible?
I know. I mean, I would have been surprised myself. And I didn't finish my story about Anthony. I got way into the history of things. But, you know, I was working with Anthony. We wrote our first paper. And we tagged all these diseases that we suspected glyphosate would cause based on what it does to biological systems. And after that paper was published, I got contacted by Nancy Swanson, and she showed me all her charts that were showing perfect correlation between the rise in glyphosate. I hadn't even looked at those data when we wrote our paper, so it was really serendipitous that the diseases she was finding were correlated with glyphosate were the same ones we had written about without knowing that there was that strong correlation. So it's quite remarkable. So Nancy and I have now continued to collaborate. I'm really enjoying working with her, and we're uncovering all kinds of new correlations. So basically, we make a great team because she goes through and finds the things that are correlated, and then I go through the science to try to figure out, well, why would this be? And it's incredible. This molecule is a monster, and it affects biology in so many ways. And one of the things is that it's a patented antimicrobial agent. That was a patent that it received before it received a patent first of all, it was patented as a chelating agent, so it would clear pipes of metals. It would clean the pipes. And then it was patented as an antimicrobial agent, and finally it was patented as an herbicide. So those two features, the chelation of metals and the antimicrobial effect, have huge, huge consequences to our biology. And you can imagine, because the gut microbes are going to be sensitive. It's just basically like having an antibiotic. And I think all the problems we're having with the antibiotic resistance in the hospitals, we have this huge problem with these monster bugs that people can't, you throw every antibiotic at it and it won't die.
Right.
That, I think, there is the antibiotics that they're feeding to the cows intentionally to make them grow faster, but there's also glyphosate as an antibiotic being fed to the cows every day because they get GMO Roundup Ready corn and soy feed. That's their diet. So the cows are being exposed to lots of glyphosate every day. That's causing antibiotic resistance in their gut and then producing all these antibiotic-resistant microbes in the world.
Well, I mean, part of the answer to the question is how does it affect so many diseases? Because it has such a negative impact in the microbiome, which is related to, speaking for our gut bacteria, is related to our immune system and even how the brain works. Matter of fact, if we look at autism, we know it affects this brain and the second brain, right? We know that both brains are affected. And reading your research, you showed that glyphosate destroys certain bacteria that we need to make neurotransmitters. It's called a shikimate pathway for our brain to work. So, so if we kill bacteria here via glyphosate, now we're not making the chemicals that our brain needs to actually work. Well, I've got a novel concept. Let's just give people serotonin uptake inhibitors and more medication instead of realizing what's going on, why we have depressed teenagers that are reaching out to drugs, and more autism. And then, not to mention the fact that your work showed that it opens up the gut, even opens up the tight junctions, which again are making I said that the big problem isn't gluten; it's just a gluten to cross over. So that's part of the reason why we're seeing it really so many different diseases, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I mean, what we're realizing, and unfortunately researchers are now really looking into the gut microbiome. It took them a long time to realize how important it is to our health. And of course, because it's failing, they're noticing its importance. Right. And lactobacillus is the microbe that gets started first in the gut. That's the microbe that drinks milk, basically. So when the baby's born and it's nursed, you're feeding lactobacillus. And you need to make that bacterium grow a lot because it will really keep your gut healthy. But lactobacillus is especially sensitive to glyphosate because it is unusual in its dependence on manganese. And glyphosate really chelates manganese. This has been shown in studies on cows. It prevents access to manganese. So the lactobacillus can't thrive. And that leaves a vacuum to allow the pathogens to overgrow. And that's how you get all the disrupted gut problems. The gluten, in fact, not only does the gluten leak out because the gut's leaky, but also there's a problem with digesting the gluten because glyphosate gets in the way. Gluten normally there's a step that takes place in the breaking down of gluten that involves forming cross-links among different amino acids in the molecule. And glyphosate gets in the way and prevents those cross-links from happening and then also binds. And so once glyphosate is bound to the gluten looks like a foreign molecule and the body develops an antibody to it. I mean, that's how we theorize in our papers how it's happening.
It's safe to say if we can fix the glyphosate problem, we can fix the gluten problem.
I absolutely think so. And if you look, I mean, back before we had glyphosate, we had very little gluten intolerance. I mean, gluten intolerance was just, I didn't even know about it. When I was a child, I never heard of it.
Mm-hmm. So really, I guess that what came first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, good old Norman Borlaug disrupted and changed gluten in dwarf wheat, and that was all the way back in the 70s. But yet, my generation, I'm 50, I don't know anyone that had a gluten issue. Nobody had a gluten issue. So we can't blame Norman completely. This glyphosate really is the bigger issue.
Absolutely. I mean, I really think it's causing most of the food allergies, that maybe even all of the food allergies. I mean, obviously we had food allergy before glyphosate, but the epidemic, the increase, I think is being caused by glyphosate, mainly by glyphosate. I think there's some issues with the vaccines as well.
Yeah, talk a little bit about some other things that the glyphosate does. I know it really it makes heavy metals more toxic. This is another problem in autism and Alzheimer's and really so many diseases today. So I mean, how does it make things more toxic, and how does it affect the brain in other ways?
It's amazing what it does to iron, actually. I've been looking a lot at iron lately. Very fascinating. And today we have actually worldwide an epidemic in anemia. Many people suffer from anemia, including in the United States. And we also have issues with iron toxicity at the same time, too much iron. So both too much iron and too little iron are a problem. No, it's very, very difficult to get to that sweet spot where the iron is just right. And the reason is because our body is no longer able to manage iron properly because glyphosate messes up the whole system of managing the iron. And that's what glyphosate will do with all the minerals, because it binds to them and builds this cage around the mineral so that the cells can't gain access if it's hiding inside this glyphosate molecule. And then it basically carries the mineral, whatever it might be. And it might be a toxic metal like aluminum, or it could be iron, which is both toxic and essential at the same time. And many of the minerals are like that. Manganese is like that too, both toxic and essential. So the body uses these in very, very important ways. Many of the enzymes depend upon one or more metals to be able to catalyze the reaction. And so if they can't gain access to those metals, the enzymes don't work. But at the same time, glyphosate will carry that metal through the blood to get to the terminal vasculature areas, the places where the blood equilibrates with other fluids. So that's going to be, for example, the kidneys and the urine, or it's going to be the cerebral spinal fluid in the brain. You're going to have the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, which are linked to the cerebral spinal fluid, or in the jaw, the salivary glands. So all of those areas are the most acidic areas of the blood, and under acid conditions, glyphosate unloads its cargo. So what happens is glyphosate carries these toxic metals into those particular places, unloads its cargo, and at that point, both the glyphosate and the metal become toxic. So it's really a very big problem. And that's why you have kidney failure. Kidney failure is totally an epidemic in step with glyphosate usage on crops. And in fact, agricultural workers in certain countries like Sri Lanka and in Central America, the workers that are working the sugarcane fields, sugarcane is sprayed with glyphosate right before the harvest. And these workers are dying in record numbers of kidney failure at a young age.
Right.
The Sri Lankans have linked it to glyphosate and have banned glyphosate as a country. The entire country has banned glyphosate usage anywhere in the country as a consequence of this evidence.
Wow.
Yeah. It seems like other countries are, banning it, GMOs even. But here in the United States, I mean, we have your research and others, and yet there's no pullback at all. I mean, how do you explain that?
I don't explain that. I am shocked. I mean, I really thought that I lived in a pretty decent country, and I'm telling you that I am getting extremely discouraged with my government. I just feel like they've been bought. I mean, it's amazing. I have friends, and I'm not naturally an activist. I mean, I like to just do science. I love science. I'd be happy to just hide in my lab and write papers if I could get by with it. Mm-hmm. But I feel it's necessary to get this message out. But I have friends who are activists, and they have sent off so many letters to legislators around the country, and they admit to me, one of them is extremely frustrated. He sent out probably over 100 letters, and he hasn't gotten anything back from anybody, other than maybe some form acknowledgement that the letter was received. Nobody has ever responded.
Have you had any threats? I mean, Monsanto has a lot of money. I mean, I'm sure very concerned about your research. I mean, is MIT are they trying to come in at you?
Well, it's remarkable, and I'm very proud of MIT. I think it's a really fantastic institution, and MIT is pretty tolerant, I think, of, we have Noam Chomsky, and he's done a lot of activism, and they have not told me anything about not doing. They haven't tried to stop me from doing anything that I've done so far. And also my funding agency has been very supportive, and they've continued to fund my work, which is remarkable, I think. Because it's very hard to get funding, of course, to do the kind of stuff I'm doing.
I hope more shows like this make it more plausible. That's for sure. So I know that when we look at I teach a lot about dementia, Alzheimer's, and really this is a growing fast epidemic. I know that you in some of your papers you talk about how glyphosate disrupts something called cholesterol sulfate. And I love telling people, I love the shock about, could heart disease actually be a cholesterol deficiency? And some of your work actually shows that it is, right? I love that because I call it the 180-degree opposite. I was saying in health, if you want to know where health lies, it's 180 degrees opposite of where you think. And cholesterol is one of those topics, right? So explain a little bit about, how could heart disease be a cholesterol deficiency? And how does that play into Alzheimer's in the brain? Because glyphosate is really a problem when it comes to this cholesterol sulfate or cholesterol topic.
It is. It's really quite remarkable because the liver actually produces cholesterol sulfate and ships it out through the bile acids to the gut, and that helps with the digesting. The bile acids, of course, help digest the fats, but eventually that cholesterol sulfate ends up in the chylomicron, which gets sent back into the body via the lymph system, and it lands in the blood. The first place it joins the blood is right before it enters the heart. So the body has set up a mechanism by which the liver directly delivers cholesterol sulfate to the heart via the chylomicron. And the heart loves the chylomicron. It will take the chylomicron as its source of fuel, given a choice. And there was a study that was done in vitro on a rat heart, and even between LDL and chylomicron, the heart would rather consume energy fuel from the chylomicron. So it's really interesting to me that there's a setup to really supply the heart with cholesterol sulfate. And I think both the cholesterol and the sulfate are absolutely essential for the performance of the heart. The heart has to, it's a muscle that can't relax. It has to work all the time. Right. And it needs a lot of energy. And the sulfate is really important for supplying the energy. And this is based on a very complex mechanism involving water, actually, gelled water. And so it's a very interesting space that I've been studying with some very smart people. I'm learning a lot from these people who are experts in this area, such as Jerry Pollack, of water and the power of water to actually generate electricity under the right circumstances. But those circumstances involve sulfate. So when sulfate's deficient, the heart doesn't have enough electricity. And that's going to cause heart failure.
And people have to understand that sulfate and cholesterol come together because cholesterol just can't be free floating around by itself. It's either carried in a particle or connected to sulfate. As a matter of fact, I mean, that's part of the link of why we're seeing it is a link to Alzheimer's, etc. So back up, glyphosate affects this cholesterol sulfate, and we need this cholesterol sulfate for our heart. We need it for our brain, and therefore cholesterol, and people are low in cholesterol, for goodness sake. So we have this combination of cholesterol and sulfate being attacked. I mean, is this why we're seeing so many increases in these brain diseases?
Absolutely. I mean, cholesterol is really, really important in the brain. The brain has 5% of the body's weight and 25% of the body's cholesterol. The brain loves cholesterol, and it desperately needs cholesterol to be able to transmit nerve signals. So you don't want to have insufficient cholesterol in your brain. And in fact, I've seen studies on the elderly. There was a wonderful 17-year study that showed that, and they looked at 3 different measures of cholesterol, and all 3 measures, and of course all 3 together especially, showed the people who had low levels of cholesterol had increased dementia, increased problems with their brains, and increased frailty, and also shorter lifespan. Everything was bad with respect to low cholesterol. And so it's amazing to me. And of course, also there have been studies on Alzheimer's, and they've shown that people with Alzheimer's have low cholesterol, and the ones with worse Alzheimer's have lower cholesterol. Very, very well correlated with these problems.
Well, and what are you saying is low? What would you recommend as far as good cholesterol levels go?
Well, that's not a question I can answer, because I really feel that whatever the level is good, because your body is smart. And if you've got a problem, your body's going to raise the cholesterol, and that's a good thing. And so the issue really is more about oxidation. So if you have oxidized LDL, that's an indicator of a really big problem. And you're going to have oxidized LDL if you've got glyphosate poisoning, because glyphosate causes the oxidation damage. It's been shown in multiple studies in the liver to cause increased release of these toxic oxidizing agents that are going to mess up molecules in the body. And so I didn't finish the story about glyphosate and bile acids, because the bile acids don't flow because glyphosate messes up the enzymes, which are the cytochrome P450 enzymes in the liver that make the bile acids. And those enzymes also activate, the same enzymes activate vitamin D. And we have a vitamin D deficiency epidemic today also in this country. I think it's directly attributable to glyphosate's poisoning of those enzymes that activate vitamin D in the liver.
Wow. That's amazing. And the cholesterol subject is, I'm so glad you said the fact that, wherever it is where the body wants it. Actually, I had low cholesterol before I got years and years ago. Bad. I was probably 170, which is an open window for neurotoxicity, ended up becoming neurotoxic. The irony was this. When I was trying to figure out what was wrong, all of a sudden I saw that I had very high cholesterol. And I said, that must be a mistake. Learning now that cholesterol actually raises the blood-brain barrier. And again, my innate intelligence knew better. There's a higher mortality, meaning death, for lower cholesterol than higher cholesterol. I want people to understand that and hear that loud and clear. And the cholesterol sulfate combination that this glyphosate disrupts is why we're seeing, with the increase of glyphosate, we're seeing a climb in all these different brain conditions, in hormone conditions, because cholesterol stabilizes hormone receptors. So there must be a correlation there as well with the cholesterol sulfate.
There's a correlation, actually, because glyphosate disrupts the adrenal gland's ability to make sulfated sterols. There's things like DHEA sulfate, and there's all the sex hormones that are sulfated, like testosterone sulfate and estrogen sulfate from estrogen, and also cortisone is also sulfated. All of these things are sulfated in transit, and that sulfation process is messed up by glyphosate. And so the adrenals have been shown to be a huge decrease in the production of testosterone, for example, in the presence of glyphosate. It messes up the ability to produce all these really important hormones. And of course, it also messes up, as you mentioned before, the neurotransmitters. So both of those together, the neurotransmitters also transmit sulfate. They also are sulfated in transit. And this process of sulfation is just a marriage, because sulfate by itself, free sulfate, is a problem in the blood. It'll make the blood it'll gel the blood, just like it gels the blood to make electricity. It can't gel the flowing blood. The flowing blood has to flow. So the body has come up with these clever mechanisms to transport sulfate by attaching it to either all these sterols, like the vitamin D sulfate, cholesterol, the sex hormones, DHEA, all of these things, cortisol, and also thyroid hormone, they're all sulfated. And methionine, all these neurotransmitters, which come from that pathway that glyphosate disrupts. The gut microbes make the precursors to these neurotransmitters, and that's serotonin, melatonin, and melanin, the skin tanning agent, thyroid hormone. They all come from that pathway. So you've got both of these enormously important groups of molecules disrupted by glyphosate, all of which are able to transport sulfate. So you get a huge problem with sulfate deficiency under these circumstances.
It's remarkable. Here we are today. Everyone's trying to lower their cholesterol, which you're saying cholesterol is the most important thing for the brain, the cell, the nerve system, and then sulfate. So we have glyphosate, affecting the sulfate, and it's amazing that we don't even see more disease, really. I mean, cholesterol targeted, the sulfate's being targeted, our gut bacteria are being targeted. Glyphosate literally affects the most important things that we need. But it explains why we're seeing the rises in all these different conditions. When I heard that, how does glyphosate affect diabetes, I was saying, how could that be? I mean, it even affects the ion transport, which affects ATP, our energy, which is another thing that we're going to see to fatigue, I'm sure. You might want to explain that a little bit.
Oh, yeah, it definitely hits the mitochondria very badly. It's been shown in multiple studies with multiple animal models that glyphosate messes up the mitochondria, which are the organelles in your cells that produce ATP. And ATP, of course, is the energy currency of life. So when you don't get enough ATP, you get tired. I mean, that's how you get chronic fatigue syndrome, I'm sure. I really feel confident that that's a consequence of the muscle cells' impairment in their ability to make ATP. And that probably comes back from their deficiency in cholesterol sulfate.
Yeah, this ion leaks. It causes these ion leaks, which we need to make ATP in the mitochondria. Last week I interviewed Thomas Seyfried, and he's saying, look, cancer is a metabolic problem. What happens first, and this was all the way back from Warburg's theory, is the mitochondria gets affected. Something damages the mitochondria, and then all of a sudden we have this odd fermentation, in a different to produce ATP in a different format. And he's saying this is the problem. Well, my gosh, I don't know, but you need to get together with Seyfried because this will be another paper. But we're looking, it damaging mitochondria and what's causing damaging mitochondria and ion leaks. I mean, come on, glyphosate has to be, leading to cancer in this route.
Absolutely, and in fact, it's remarkable the correlations between glyphosate and a number of different cancers that Nancy Swanson has found: pancreatic cancer, thyroid cancer, colon cancer, kidney cancer, liver cancer, all of these, and probably prostate cancer as well, not as clear there, all very strongly correlated with glyphosate usage on crops.
Now, if it affects ATP in the mitochondria, it's going to lead to cancer and a host of other unexplainable illnesses that we see today. So, Meredith, I know you have other questions, so I don't want to hog all the questions because I'm all excited.
Well, just kind of thinking with the layperson's brain here too, this is some heavy science that you guys are talking about, and I think it's so important for us to understand. And these episodes I'm going to have to rewatch too because it's a lot of amazing information. But perhaps someone's just sitting here and watching the show and wondering, okay, well, how does this affect me? I feel like I eat pretty well, but maybe a lot of people out there want to lose weight, especially this time of the year with the new year coming up. I know that you've said that GMOs increase likelihood of being obese. So maybe if you can talk about that a little bit.
I'd be delighted. Yeah, in fact, it's very interesting. And early on when I started looking at glyphosate, I came across a paper. The paper was arguing that sugar was contributing to the obesity problem in the U.S., and they showed a plot that went all the way back to the 1700s, and they showed the trends of obesity. And you could see that we were getting obese slowly over the second half of the 1900s, like 1950 to 1975. There was a positive slope. We were getting fatter. 1975, it hit a corner, and all of a sudden we started getting fatter faster, much steeper slope. 1975 was when glyphosate was introduced into the food chain, and I don't think that's coincidental. I think the glyphosate is continuing to cause the obesity epidemic, which is, by the way, still getting worse today. We're about as obese as you could possibly imagine, and we're still getting fatter. It's incredible. So many people in America that are just, insanely overweight. You wouldn't have ever, if you saw someone like that when I was a child, you would stare at them because you'd be so surprised. And now we see so many of them that it's just part of the, normal. It's considered normal to be, 300 or 400 pounds, really. I mean, it's incredible. There's a reason for that because glyphosate, I mentioned the CYP enzymes in the liver that make the bile acids. Well, those CYP enzymes are also really, really important for detoxifying a whole bunch of toxic chemicals, including drugs that we might take. But We have all the, PCBs. There's lots of stuff out there in our environment that's also toxic, the insecticides. Many of them are not water soluble, and we depend upon the CYP enzymes to convert them into a water soluble product that can then be excreted. And so if the CYP enzymes aren't doing that job, those fat soluble toxic chemicals have to be stored somewhere in order to keep our body from being damaged by them. And so it's very convenient to have a big belly where you can just dump all these toxic chemicals that you can't deal with, just dump them into that big belly. And if you start losing weight fast, you're going to release all those toxins, and they're going to cause damage to your brain, for example.
We see that stuff, and and here we're a new epidemic is weight loss resistance, the inability to lose weight despite what people eat and how much they exercise. And I'll tell you, we see people all the time lose 10 or 15 pounds. And not only do they develop new, but they also stop losing weight and even gain weight back. And I keep saying weight loss today has more to do with toxins' effect on hormones than anything else. And here glyphosate playing a major role in that. I didn't know that correlation like that exactly at 1975.
Yes,
we saw that rise.
And Nancy has shown from CDC hospital discharge data that obesity is highly correlated with glyphosate usage on corn and soy crops. It's going up with a very strong correlation, just like also diabetes, and as I mentioned, and even LDL, by the way. LDL levels in the population are going up despite this aggressive use of statins. And they're going up in step with the increased use of glyphosate. I think it's causing the high LDL, and I'll tell you why, because when the liver can't produce the cholesterol sulfate and ship it out through the bile acid, it has to ship the cholesterol out some other way. And the way it does it is by packaging it up inside those LDL particles. So it's stuck having to send out LDL instead of sending out bile acids directly into the blood, instead of sending bile acids over to the gut where they can be used to help digest the fats. So it really messes things up in the liver.
Well, which is actually in the number of particles of cholesterol is more damaging than your total cholesterol.
Yes, the small, dense LDL particles. And those are the ones that cannot return to the liver because they've been oxidized and glycated. They're such a mess. I mean, they've just been completely gummed up. And the liver won't take them back under those circumstances. Another thing interesting, I mean, I could get into statin drugs for hours, but there's also PCSK9 inhibitors. I don't know if you've heard of those. That's a new drug that they're really getting excited about to lower cholesterol even more than what you get with statin drugs. It's a shot that you take. It's really scary. PCSK9 inhibitors inhibit this enzyme called PCSK9 in the liver. And what's really interesting about that enzyme is that it binds to sulfate and becomes inactive. So that enzyme prevents the LDL from coming back. But if there's enough sulfate, then that enzyme is naturally inactivated and the LDL comes back. So the reason why, an important reason why the liver can't take back the LDL is because it doesn't have enough sulfate. And the reason why it doesn't have enough sulfate is because of glyphosate. Wow. So if you just poison that enzyme, you let the liver take back the cholesterol even though it can't afford to do so because it doesn't have the sulfate, you're going to end up with fatty liver disease. And we have an epidemic right now in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I think it's caused directly by glyphosate. And PCSK9 inhibitors are going to make it worse. And in fact, the early evidence coming out already is showing that PCSK9 inhibitors cause fatty liver disease. They've never shown that they actually improve your heart health. They've only shown that they lower cholesterol. And they're marketing them like, oh, this is a great solution for getting your cholesterol down to zero, which is so insane. I mean, I just get so upset by this craziness that we live under right now with the medical system.
And doctors are just buying into it because they don't have time to look at the literature. They don't read literature. They're just doing what they're told, and the drug companies come in, the reps come in, and here's another low in cholesterol. And look, most doctors believe that cholesterol is the enemy. They do, Stephanie.
I know.
Yeah, I know. And
I certainly know that because I have people who tell me my doctor has told me I simply cannot. I have to take this statin drug. What can I do? My doctor says I have to. I mean, I sort of say don't listen to your doctor, but doctors need to get aware of what's happening.
Yeah, I send people papers all the time, and they bring them to their doctor, and the doctor gets very mad. We're in a hard time right now with the cholesterol problem. How is it linked to diabetes? Because to me, diabetes is leading to diabetes and thyroid are almost the same condition these days. It's like one gets one and the other. But, I mean, how is it linked to these conditions?
Yeah, I mean, there's complicated links. But one thing, of course, is that diabetes causes high blood sugar, right? So you're going to have too much sugar in your blood. Sugar is actually toxic. Because of, you can burn it, and it will actually react with things in uncontrollable ways if you just have it in your blood. And so that's what causes glycation damage.
Yes.
You measure your hemoglobin A1C. That's a damaged hemoglobin product from sugar attack.
Yeah.
And so when the proteins in your blood get damaged, and including the protein ApoB in the LDL particle get damaged by the sugar, they don't work anymore. So the LDL particle gets damaged by the sugar such that it can't be taken up. It can't even be taken up by the cells to deliver its goods, and so it just becomes sort of a useless remnant. You get these small, dense LDL particles that have nowhere to go because the liver won't take them back, and they're all gummed up. Nobody wants them, in a sense. So the only cell that's willing to take these things are these macrophage cleanup cells. So these are the cells that go into the artery wall in the heart, and they take in these damaged small dense LDL particles and carefully take them apart and recycle them. They want to keep that cholesterol because cholesterol is so important, but they're storing it in the artery wall, waiting for an opportunity to unload it as cholesterol sulfate. And the reason why they can't unload it is because there's no sulfate. The sulfate deficiency is the problem.
Your work is linked glyphosate, the overuse of GMOs, to all these different things. What do we do? Can we avoid this? Fortunately,
and I have to say, the U.S. has no GMO labeling. Very frustrating. You don't know if it's GMO or not. But we do have certified organic, and it's a pretty respected label. And I really, really appreciate certified organic. So we are very careful when we go shopping. We've stopped eating things if we can't find them as certified organic. We buy everything, including our spices, our wine and beer. Everything in our house is certified organic. And I would encourage everybody to do that. Luckily, you can in this country. It's actually, I think certified organic is probably more available here than almost anywhere else in the world. Except for places like Bhutan, where they're like organic, they're just all organic. But this is a good place to be able to get certified organic. And I don't know about other parts of the country, but certainly where I live, I have not had a problem with getting most of the things I eat organic.
Yeah.
I'm wondering too, because I know perhaps not everyone is able to afford 100% organic, so are there certain crops that they should definitely avoid if they can't buy everything organic? I know corn, soy, some of these other sugar beets, but if you maybe give that list.
Yes, well, of course, there's the GMO Roundup Ready crops, which I said before, the corn, the soy, the sugar beets, the canola oil, and then alfalfa and cotton and tobacco, of course, aren't really foods, but although cotton seed oil is used as a cheap oil, and that's probably contaminated. Then there are all the crops that are sprayed with glyphosate right before the harvest, and that is, in my mind, a growing list. I'm still trying to figure out exactly which crops that is. I just found out today that peanuts can be sprayed with glyphosate right before the harvest, and legumes, and sugar cane. So this means, all the sugars are bad. You have the high fructose corn syrup, which is derived from GMO Roundup Ready corn. You have sugar beets, which are GMO Roundup Ready, and you have sugar cane, which is sprayed with glyphosate right before the harvest. We're hearing a lot these days about sugar being bad for you. I think it's the glyphosate that's in the sugar that's causing the problem.
Wow.
We're really getting mixed up in our studies because we're really studying how much glyphosate would people have different studies that get contradictory results on some particular food, and I think it's just because you have to look at how much glyphosate is in the particular form of that oil or that sugar that they're studying to judge the toxic effects of it, and they're missing that entirely when they study these things. Mm-hmm. So the sugars, and then so Cheerios, for example, even if you got non-GMO Cheerios, which they now have, right? You cannot guarantee that doesn't have glyphosate because oats are sprayed with glyphosate right before the harvest. So that won't work. Natural's not good enough. Non-GMO's not good enough. Cereals, I wouldn't buy any cereal that wasn't organic.
Yeah. I wouldn't eat any grain.
Yeah, period. That's right. Bread.
Yeah.
Right. It's a big list, and it's most of the foods that you eat, unfortunately. And, of course, if you're taking butter and cream and that sort of thing, if you're not eating organic, it's coming from a cow that's been fed huge amounts. And it's been shown to be, glyphosate has been found in human breast milk. So you can pretty much guarantee it's going to be in cow's milk, which may be a reason why we have a lot of milk allergies today. We have a lot of casein intolerance, which I'm suspecting may also be due to glyphosate in the milk.
Wow.
So, it's a pretty big list.
So connected. Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
And I have to say, it goes into the animals too. There were studies on cows and on chickens, and they found glyphosate in all the tissues, and including the muscles, which is going to be the meat. So if you're eating non-organic, if you're not eating grass-fed beef, you're probably eating glyphosate in your meat.
I was going to ask that because I refuse to eat corn-fed meat. I mean, my meat is grass-fed. And the best part about it is when you go to restaurants now, I mean, it's shocking to me. I mean, just average restaurants have grass-fed choices now. So, I mean, yeah, it is. It's really become easier. I remember watching one of your lectures. I added it to one of mine, just about, look, we're poisoning our infants from the get-go. When you look at the amount of the highest glyphosate-containing foods, soy and corn, this is what formula is made of. Oh, and then if they make it to be a senior, look what we're feeding our seniors. All these products made for seniors, right, in the senior homes.
Ensure it's got to be really toxic.
It's remarkable.
I know. It's really crazy. It's just we have to wake up. I mean, I can't understand why people aren't seeing this. I mean, I think more and more people are, but it seems so obvious to me, and it's so frustrating that people are just going about their lives as if everything's fine, because it's not. We're going to be really in a crisis. My projections of the curve, if you just look at the autism curve from the CDC, since for the past 20 years, 2 decades, and you look at the shape of that curve, you can tell very clearly it's exponential growth. And it's very easy to extend the curve to predict if it continues along the same curve, where will we be when? And you'll find out that in 2032, half the kids born, 80% of the boys, will be on the autism spectrum. That's not going to be something we can tolerate. So we're going to have to do something. I mean, it's going to become obvious to everybody soon enough, I think. And we need to do something huge. We need to do something huge.
What we're doing, I mean, we just talked about the damages of this glyphosate that's being sprayed on our food. The over-vaccinations, I mean, one vaccine after another. They still have all these different heavy metals, which the glyphosate, exemplifies the toxicity. I mean, think about this. I mean, what are we headed for, Stephanie? I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, honestly,
I know, it doesn't make any sense. You can't understand why the country wouldn't be worried about the fact that it's pretty much destroying the next generation, as far as I can tell. It's like they were just walking happily over the cliff.
Yeah. I teach something called true cellular detox, and I talk about how we have to real detox. You have to get this functioning first, right? I mean, when you look at glyphosate and how it disrupts cellular energy and how it disrupts the cell membrane and how it disrupts methylation and glutathione. I mean, I have something I teach my 5 R's of how to fix a cell, and it's a roadmap. And this is the issue. It's like this is why my passion is teaching. True cellular detox is really what it is. I mean, you can't just do a colon cleanse and walk away thinking you're going to fix this problem today. I have to introduce you to. We'll do it at another time off this show, but. We've introduced something. I'm not the brilliance behind the product, but a brilliant man from Greece hydrolyzed a clinoptilolate particle. And when you were talking about iron, a lot of people are giving this to hemochromatosis people and realizing that it's helping them. It's pulling out toxic iron. Well, it really pulls out heavy metals. I'm very critical of Zeolite, liquid zeolites on the product until this particular product, because he hydrolyzed it and he has a patent on this particle, but he also believes it binds to glyphosate and as well as heavy metals. And
is it zeolite? Did you say zeolite? It's zeolite.
Yeah, right? It's a special zeolite. It's hydrolyzed. It's the only one.
I see.
It's hydrolyzed, so not only does it cross the gut, but it actually crosses into the cell and into the brain, and that's what his research shows.
Well, so Anthony Samso just told me recently that zeolite is actually used by the industry to clear any remaining glyphosate in places where they manufacture glyphosate. They use zeolite to get rid of the glyphosate, so they know about that. And I understand that zeolite is being used also for autistic kids. So I think that it's amazing that they haven't sort of connected those dots. That zeolite is being used to remove the glyphosate.
But one of the big problems, and this is my criticism of zeolite has been in the human body. Number one, most of it's contaminated. It holds on to certain toxins that it will let go of and certain acids, right, in the gut. Number two, we tested them, and they really, even the solution ones, the ones that claim to be a solution, but they were really a suspension, they didn't leave the gut, let alone get into the cell. This one actually leaves the gut, and I had to see the research myself to believe it because of my criticism of some of these products. But the problem has been that Zeolite didn't leave the gut, really, so it found well in the gut, but this one actually gets into the cell. Detox is the product. I'll introduce you to it. You can ask Meredith. She'll give you some information on it. But it's a product right now we're just selling to physicians and doctors, but it works, and we know it works for glyphosate. We knew it worked for glyphosate outside the body. This one actually goes into the cell, into the membranes. So this is a major defense against this glyphosate problem. So, you know,
wow, that sounds encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't have a good answer as to how long would it take, if forever, to actually get rid of glyphosate if you simply stopped eating it. Like if you went to a strict organic diet, even then, of course, it's not guaranteed to be glyphosate free. But a theoretical question is, if somehow you could stop eating glyphosate, would it eventually work its way out of your body naturally, or do you have to do something special to actually coax it out, or is it impossible to get it out? You know, maybe it's just settled into the bone marrow and it's impossible to get it out. I don't know the answer to that.
The damage that it causes to the natural cellular detox pathways is the problem, right? So it comes in, it damages. That's what we're doing. I mean, part of what true cellular detox is upregulating these cellular pathways because of the toxic damage that's been there. So the answer is most people probably wouldn't get rid of it, even if you got rid of it in your diet, you know, without upregulating the cellular.
Especially once your detox system is already shot to hell, right? Because then you can't fix it.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating.
We're talking about almost being, you know, we have to do the best we can to avoid it. Obviously, eating 100% organic and grass-fed, and I agree, and that's the way we live our life too, Stephanie. I feel today people cannot afford not to do that. In really upregulating the cellular pathways, and you know, we have some new products that are, you know, coming out that are really trying to combat it from another side of detoxification. But we are up against something so much bigger than you and I, and we're just small voices in this. But you're a large voice, so we applaud you and thank you for that.
Well, thank you for what you're doing, because I am not involved in the issue of how to fix the problem. I'm just studying, you know, what is the problem. So it's very, very important, the kind of work you guys are doing. Really,
we appreciate it. We're on opposite ends in the
and you're in the cold and I'm in the hot. So.
Exactly right. Exactly. We're still on opposite ends, right? Do you have any finishing questions for Stephanie?
Wow. Well, I think you guys have covered so much, and I think the most important message is to avoid GMOs and glyphosate as much as possible. Education is so important, and so many people just don't know. And it's really that simple. So if you're watching, please share this with your friends and family, anybody you care about. Get educated, get informed. Thank you, Dr. Seneff, so much for what you're doing on the research end. Thank you, Dr. Pompa, for what you're doing to help people once they do experience the health challenges from, you know, these toxins in our environment. Yeah. So thank you both so much for this amazing show, for this amazing information. And Dr. Seneff, I'll definitely send you that information. And once again, if you have questions, if you have responses, we want to hear from you. So send in feedback on the info form on podcast.drpompa.com. If you wanted to check out Dr. Pompa's article on It's Not Just Gluten, which references Dr. Seneff's work, you can find that on drpompa.com as well. In the search engine, you can just type in gluten and it'll pop right up. So thank you so much again, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next week.